Hello everyone, welcome to this session of Maharishi Ayurveda tips for busy people and also for smart people, as compared to tips for dummies. And this section is on knowing oneself, and generally and specifically, because on that basis we can tailor our diet, our routine, our lifestyle to suit our own physiology, to nourish and strengthen, to bring out our strengths, and to reduce any imbalances or weaknesses. Purpose of Maharishi Ayurveda is to create balance and to promote life and lifespan and integrate mind, body, behavior, and environment. And you start with oneself. Every tradition suggests that it's good to know yourself, but what is the self? So in Maharishi Ayurveda, the self, capital S, self, is one's own consciousness, one's own awareness. That's the foundation of everything. No experience, no knowledge can be gained without consciousness, without awareness. And so the basis of life, Maharishi explains, is that field of pure consciousness beyond thought, which we easily access through our transcendental meditation. So, quote from Maharishi's book, Maharishi Form of Natural Law, National Law for Doctors. I think it's still available at MIU Press. He had all these little books, these little pocket books that he suggested people carry around and read from time to time. And on page 19 this says, consciousness is fundamental to life, Maharishi says. It is the prime mover of life. Every word that we speak and every act that we perform is an impulse of consciousness. So in Maharishi Ayurveda, consciousness is primary, physiology is secondary. Everything depends on our level of awareness, our level of consciousness. Maharishi goes on to say, all life emerges from and is sustained in consciousness. The whole universe is the expression of consciousness. The reality of the universe is one unbounded ocean of consciousness in motion. And we know in Dr. Nader's book, Dr. Tony Nader, our global director and president of MIU, has written this wonderful book, Consciousness is All There Is. Highly recommended. And so Maharishi's been saying this from the beginning, that this ocean of consciousness really is the inner intelligence at the basis of the physiology and of everything in the universe. And it turns out to be not out there, but in here. We can contact that field in our innermost nature. It is our innermost nature, our own field of pure consciousness. So that's the self. If one wants to know oneself, one can't leave out that, because that is the fundamental, that is the self. Now consciousness, it's interesting, it's a singular field, unbounded, immutable, eternal field of lively intelligence. But it also has flavors or features. So continuing from this book, consciousness has three qualities. Maharishi says, consciousness is that which is conscious of itself. And we know this from our meditation. When the mantra slips away and we're left all by ourselves, unbounded awareness, then what we're knowing is consciousness. Being conscious of itself, consciousness is the knower of itself. Being the knower of itself, consciousness is both the knower and the known. And being both the knower and the known, consciousness is also the process of knowing. Thus, consciousness has these three qualities within its self-referral singularity. Knower, process of knowing and known. Any knowledge requires a knower and it requires an object of knowledge. And in this case, self-referral consciousness, pure consciousness, transcending the state of yoga, the state of samadhi, the state of nirvana, many names. It is consciousness knowing itself. So there's the principle of knower, process of knowing and known. So three in one. Subject, object, and their relationships. So this is the fundamental dynamics at the basis of the functioning of all the laws of nature in this Vedic understanding. That all the laws of nature, all the force and matter fields, everything emerges from this consciousness knowing itself, and then different variations of those three values. So that's in the field of consciousness. Consciousness knows itself. It's an unbounded field, a singular field, but it's knowing itself. Because it's consciousness, it has the ability to know and ability to experience. And then, consciousness has three qualities, and that expresses in the physiology as three fundamental controlling principles of intelligence. That's known as the three doshas. Knower, knowing, and known express as the three doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha. Movement, transformation, and structure. A little bit related to knower and the structure, kapha more related to the object of knowledge, the knower, self, more related to vata, which is movement, communication, and transportation. And then the dynamics of the physiology, transforming value of pitta, which is transformation, heat, metabolism, digestion, that transforming intelligence related to the process of knowing a bit more. Actually, it's the gaps between those three that give rise to vata, pitta, kapha. The gaps between knower, process of knowing, and known, Maharishi explains, is actually where the emergence of vata, pitta, kapha come from. So this is a chart showing that relationship. Samhita is totality, wholeness, togetherness of knower, knowing, and known. That's the wholeness. That's pure consciousness. But these three features of consciousness, knower, process of knowing, known, rishi, in Sanskrit called rishi, knower, devata, process of knowing, and chandas, the known, they express as vata, pitta, kapha, as we said. And so every individual has their own balance of vata, pitta, kapha, their own predominance. And we'll come back to this chart later because it'll be important when we see what to do about this in mind-body type that we have. So again, the nature of these three controlling principles, vata is movement, pitta is transformation, kapha is structure, vata, pitta, kapha. And when in balance, they maintain good health. And when out of balance, they are the basic causes of imbalance, disturbance, and disease. So in Ayurveda, we just have to balance these three things, the dynamics of vata, pitta, and kapha. If those three controlling principles are in balance, the physiology is in balance, and one maintains health. So what is vata? Vata is made of the air and space elements. In Ayurveda, there are 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, space. Earth is the principle of solidity in nature. It's dense. And air is the principle of movement in nature, or the gaseous state of matter also. And it tends to flow and move. I'll go back to earth. Then water is the next most dense. It has a flow to it, but it also has some density, some viscosity, and it's cooling in nature and flowing in nature. And fire, of course, is the principle of heat, movement, which gives rise to friction, which gives rise to heat. And heat can break down and dissolve things and melt things. And so it's the fire, the state of nature where there's dynamism, energy, and heat and friction. And air is the principle of flow. Air is the gaseous state of matter, but it's the principle of movement, kind of unbounded, flowing quality. And space is the abstract arena on which everything in the universe plays out. It's, there's dimension, there's space. And the space gives rise to the principle of individuation, where this thing and this thing, there's some space between them. So all this ultimately happens in consciousness first, and then it expresses as the laws of nature these 5 elements. So air and space is vata. So it's the principle of movement. It's light and moving. Pitta is fire and water. So it's hot and liquid and sharp. And kapha is water and earth, so it's heavy and dense and more stable and more sticky. So these 3 fundamental principles in the physiology are made of these 5 elements. And so the qualities of vata being air and space, it's going to be light and cold and subtle and minute and moving, clear, and also coarse, brittle, dryness, and roughness. We can think of wind. Wind can be a bit rough. And Pitta, being fire and water, it's slightly oily, some liquid to it, and it's hot, of course, with fire, and sharp, and liquid due to water. There's a sour quality, but fire and water together gives some sourness, like acidity, flowing because of the water element, and pungent because of the heat. Pungent is kind of hot, spicy quality. And Kapha is heavy, earth and water. So it's heavy, it's cold, it's dense, it's oily. Put earth and water together, you get sticky quality, mud-like thing. So, and sweet and stable. It's stability, and sweetness is a natural quality of earth and water. There's some sweetness there. And so the functions of Vata, being air and space, and its movement, transportation, and communication. The whole physiology needs, things have to move. The food has to move through the tract, the air has to move, and breathing. The nerve impulses have to move, thoughts have to move. All that's governed by Vata. And all the transportation. And then communication. Think of nerve impulses. All this communication going on in the physiology. Vata. Pitta, digestion, so that heat digests, breaks down the food. Think of the stomach acid and the warmth. And metabolism is all the chemical processes, biochemical processes that take the nutrients and transform them into energy and into tissues. And that's that transforming intelligence, fire and water. And Kapha is structure, cohesion, lubrication. Holds it together, also lubricates. It's sticky, has some viscosity. And earth and water elements, the structure. So this is a review of those three doshas and their functions. Main seat of Kapha is in the chest, where the lungs have all this mucosa, this kind of sticky fluid mucosa, to help protect the body from cold, dry air, also to soften and moisten the air and make it warmer, and also mucosa also, traps any unwanted substances, especially in the nasal passages. But Kapha is up here. And also, so it's the lubrication of the respiratory system, but also the lubrication of the heart area. So, main seat in the chest. Pitta is the digestive area, that heat transformation. So the liver, the pancreas, the lower stomach, the small intestine, all the digestive organs there. For Pitta is the seat of Pitta, called Amashaya. And Vata is the colon, large intestine. We call it the bowel movement. And in the colon, what happens is the water is mostly absorbed, and it creates dryness and pungency, this quality of pungency, this little bit of warmth, not warmth, but spicy quality, this pungent quality, and dryness. Also, it has a big nervous system, the enteric nervous system. So the gut-brain axis is a new discovery that's always been known in Ayurveda. So the colon is the seat of Vata, and if Vata gets out of balance, the first thing that happens often is dry colon leads to constipation, like that. So now everyone has their own mind-body type, their own predominance of these three doshas, natural to them. So a person can be Vata predominant, Pitta predominant, Kapha predominant. So there's 7 main types. Person can be Vata Pitta predominant, can be Vata Kapha predominant, which is rare, can be Pitta and Kapha predominant, or they could have all three, also very rare, but can happen. A person is all three pretty well evenly balanced. So these are the 7 mind-body types. And knowing our mind-body type is helpful because then it tells us what our natural inclinations are, and also how to manage those to stay in balance. For example, a Vata predominant person tends to have a light, thin build. They're usually more cold inside. They have a tendency to a lot of movement, maybe leaning to some worry or anxiety. Also, tendency towards constipation or gassy digestion. Those tendencies are there, dry skin, dryness. And so a person with Vata predominant physiology has to manage that throughout life, how to balance Vata. So they have to have diet and routine and lifestyle that continually manages and balances that vata so they can stay healthy and happy. Vata in balance is enthusiasm, but vata out of balance is worry, like that. Person predominantly pitta, is that heat, that fire, so they tend to be hot, have sharp digestion, maybe sharp emotions or sharp speech. And so that needs to be balanced and managed continuously throughout life, and like that. So let's see some of the features in the next two slides. And now let's see the different features of these different mind-body types, or prakritis. Prakriti means nature. So for first face and complexion. Vata person, thin, oval, pale face, or gray complexion, tends to be dry. So thin and oval. For pitta, angular features, sharp cheeks, sharp chin, sharp nose, more of an angular type of face. And reddish complexion, maybe freckles, and early wrinkling because there may be some dryness because too much heat. And for kapha, round face, round cheeks, big forehead, bigger nose, big round chin or square chin, jaw. Square, if it's angular, is more pitta, but if it's a big jaw, then it's more kapha. And clear, glowing complexion. So give yourself a 1 for wherever you fall in that range. Have a look in the mirror. Next, psychomotor movements, gait or speech. So how a person moves. And vata is quick movements and always moving, and eyes darting here and there, and they're sitting somewhere, they're often moving. Pitta, purposeful, sharp, steady movements. The person is going somewhere, they're focused, they're precise. They want to get somewhere, they want to get it done. And kapha, their movements are methodical, stable, slow, steady, relaxed. They're sitting there, they're not moving much, they're very relaxed. And when they get up, they move more slowly and more stable, methodical. So give your point for how you move. And then body weight. Vata person has a thinner build, so lighter weight. Pitta is medium weight, and body weight is heavier with kapha. Because kapha is earth and water elements, again. Now, body frame, the structure of the body, is small, boned, more bony, angular, less muscle. Thinner build is vata. Medium build, medium musculature is pitta. And bigger, large frame, sturdy, plump, heavy frame, good large muscles can be kapha. Also more adipose tissue can be kapha. Now we go to joints. So bony, prominent joints. You look at the hands and wrists and you see the bones and the veins are very prominent. What we're talking about joints now, very prominent bones, then that's more vata. A medium prominence in the joints is pitta. They may be sharper, and well-rounded, well-covered joints is kapha. Now, in terms of eyes, size and shape, small, deep-set eyes, or protuberant eyes, actually protruding, projecting out a bit, in appearance can be vata. So generally smaller eyes, and they can be protuberant or they can be deep-set. And any irregularities is also more so for vata. Medium-sized eyes, almond-shaped eyes, or some sharp corners, and sharp penetrating gaze, that's pitta eyes. And large, round eyes with a soft gaze, that's kapha. Now, tendons and veins, again, looking at the back of the hands or the wrists. Prominent, very visible veins and tendons, is vata. Medium prominence and visibility is pitta. And well covered and hidden veins and tendons is kapha. And next we have abdominal wall thickness. So if there's a thin abdomen, it's more vata, medium abdomen, more pitta, and thick or increased adipose tissue is more kapha. Abdominal wall thickness, if you grab a handful of flesh over the tummy and feel the abdominal wall thickness. Skin quality. Vata is dry, drier skin, tends towards dryness. Pitta is fair and burns easily because there's that fire there in the physiology. And again, reddish quality, slightly oily skin. And then Kapha tends towards oilers, fair, glowing complexion, more whitish complexion, perhaps, and tends towards oily skin. Next is temperature intolerance. So one really doesn't like cold, that's either Vata or Kapha, because they're both cold. But particularly a dry, windy cold is abhorrent for Vata, and cold and damp is something that Kapha does not like. Or a Kapha person can be comfortable at most temperatures also. And then of course Pitta is hot, especially hot and humid, because fire and water. Pitta doesn't like hot. They're always hot inside anyway. Emotional reaction to challenges. So Vata tends to worry and anxiety. A Vata Prakriti person has that tendency. Not that it's always manifest, but if under challenge, they'll move towards worry and anxiety. And Pitta more anger and irritability, that sharp, heated emotion. And Kapha generally was stable and calm, not minding. There's that old story that something wrong happens in the office, and the Vata person says, "Oh, what did I do?" And Pitta says, "Whose fault is it?" And it's not mine. This is, simplistic. And the Kapha says, "What's the problem?" Like that. So emotional reaction. So give yourself a score for that. Then physical strength and stamina. Variable and low strength and stamina is more towards Vata. Medium to strong compared to others is Pitta. And high compared to others, strong, stable, good stamina is more Kapha. So that tendency we can rate. And finally, the type of digestion. This is also important. So Vata is moving and irregular by nature. So if digestion is irregular, sometimes it digests well, sometimes it doesn't. Just that irregularity is the hallmark of Vata digestion. Also tendency towards gas and bloating, variable appetite, like that. That variability is Vata. For Pitta, sharp, strong digestion, cannot skip meals, and has strong hunger, and can be tendency towards acidity and burning if it gets out of balance. And for Kapha, digestion is slow and softer. So it takes a longer time to digest meals, several hours, maybe 5 or 6 hours, whereas for Pitta it might be 3 or 4 hours. Several hours to digest, and they can easily skip meals, not a problem. And some heaviness, there's that heaviness there. And the digestive fire is cooler and heavier, not so sharp as Pitta, and not variable like Kapha, Vata. Okay? Good, so give yourself a score. Give it 1 point for each feature, for each dosha. And again, you can split the score. You can give 1 for each if you're somewhere in between. And go through the chart and score yourself. And, for example, if your skin is dry and reddish, then you can give 1 point for Vata, 1 point for Pitta. I mean, these are all tendencies now, long-term, not just last week or last month, but during the whole life, for years together. What your general tendency is, that's a person's mind-body type. So add up the score, and that's an indication of your mind-body type. Now, what to do with all of this? So if we see that we're Vata predominant, then we need warmth. Vata is cold, and Vata is irregular. So warm, unctuous food, favoring sweet, sour, and salty tastes, because those are the heavier tastes, more grounding. Regular routine. Vata is irregular, so good regular routine. Eat on time, sleep on time, meditate on time, work on time, play on time. Good regulated routine is very important for Vata. And avoiding worries. Meditation is the best thing, and take it a bit easy. Pitta predominant, we avoid particularly hot, spicy foods because that increases the fire and can disrupt and give rise to acidity and burning and type of indigestion. And more cooling, soothing foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, again whole grains, but just avoiding the hot, spicy things mainly. And also avoiding hot emotions, anger and jealousy and too much competition, avoiding those things. And staying cool, body temperature. Don't exercise in the hot sun. Exercise is better in the cool of the morning or the cool of the evening. And not really aggressive exercise too much. Pittas tend to be competitive, and that's fine, but it can be aggravating if there's too much competition like that. And kapha, if kapha is predominant, then lighter foods and good warm spices. All the spices are good for kapha. And, more vegetables and lighter grains like couscous, quinoa, amaranth. And not so much heavy wheat and heavy foods like potatoes and heavy cheesy dishes and heavy desserts, but more lighter foods, fresh foods. Good exercise daily, important to get moving, stimulating, so not sitting but moving. And do something new. Kapha is stable and steady, and that's great, but one can tend toward lethargy or getting into a rut. So doing something new is good for kapha. And for all mind-body types, it's ideal if we learn to take our pulse, and there's a whole 16-lesson course on self-pulse reading from MIU through continuing education. And also we'll have an introduction of pulse. We have an introduction of pulse in this series. And then we can see for ourselves, what's the dominant dosha here today in my pulse? And that will guide us toward what we need to balance. Now, we don't assess the mind-body type from the pulse. We assess the situation in the doshas now through the pulse. And that tells us what we really need to focus on right now. So again, we're not assessing the mind-body type from the pulse. We're assessing which doshas are out of balance or in balance. And then, of course, the diet routine you want to adopt that's best for your prakriti and the doshas that are more active in your physiology now, which you can know from the pulse or doing a consultation, a Maharishi Ayurveda consultation. Then you can really know what you need to balance. And here's a little chart that shows, in summary, relationship of food and consciousness. So we have pure consciousness, sanghita, togetherness of Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, knower process of knowing and known. This is our real nature, our own consciousness. What they express in physiology is vata, pitta, and kapha. And if vata is increased or out of balance, we want vata pacifying foods. And likewise pitta and kapha. So consciousness left to itself, in its simplest state, self-referral consciousness, sanghita, togetherness of knower, knowing and known, of Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, is the source of everything else. And in terms of food, food is the expressed value of consciousness. It has consciousness as its cause of manifestation. The state or quality of consciousness determines the quality of food which is desired and available. Very interesting. So, if a person is more balanced, then if vata gets out of balance a little bit, then a person will naturally desire sweet, sour, and salty tastes and things that pacify, and warm and oily food, that pacify vata. But if we get more disconnected from consciousness and more out of balance, then we can start to desire the wrong things. So if we're connected to consciousness, we'll desire the right things. That's important. And also what's available. It's interesting. As consciousness expands, as awareness expands, we think and act more in accord with natural law, and we get support of natural law. And our desires are more readily fulfilled because nature's behind us. If we favor natural law favors us. And so what's available will be increasingly useful and healthy. It's a beautiful principle. This is the way we engage the laws of nature to support our desires. And this is the way we live in tune, more in tune with natural law, by getting in touch with our own self, our own consciousness. So consciousness, through its own self-interacting dynamics, varies itself and manifests as food and physiology at the level of physical matter. So I hope this is helpful. It's good to know ourselves and what our mind-body type is, and also which dosha or doshas need to be balanced. And then we can act accordingly.